I've always had the habit of listening to AM radio while driving. It helps pass the time, keeps my mind clear. On long roads with no cell phone signal, it's my companion. But on that trip, something different happened. I was crossing New Mexico, heading towards Nevada, a dry, silent stretch, with no town nearby. I started searching for a new station, turning the knob slowly. When it went past the maximum frequency, it went past 1080, and instead of freezing, it went down to 0.0. The radio screen blinked, and for a second I thought it had malfunctioned. But then, the transmission started. First came a loud hissing noise, like something in the background. A low sound, like someone breathing hard. I thought it was interference, a signal from another vehicle or a distant tower. But then I heard a voice clearly. My own. It was my voice. It said, urgently, hoarsely, "Don't turn right. Don't turn right." It repeated the phrase, weaker each time, as if it were struggling to speak. My hand shook on the steering wheel. The radio went silent for a few seconds, then came back on with an instrumental song I'd never heard before, but which sounded incredibly familiar. Like I'd heard it in a dream. I pulled over to a pullout in the road, turned off the radio, and waited. I took a deep breath. This didn't make sense. I turned it back on, tried to tune into other stations, but nothing worked. Only the frequency, 0.0. It always came back to the same sound. And the music, always the same. Slow, drawn out, like a lament. I kept driving, trying to pretend none of it had happened. But up ahead, a makeshift sign appeared, right turn, alternate route. My body froze. The road was straight, but the detour looked official, with cones and a support car in the background. The voice came back on the radio again, low and clear, "Do not turn right." And it was my voice, again. I stopped the truck before the intersection. I stood there for a few minutes, staring at the turnoff. It looked normal, just a dirt road going through the desert. But something about that place made me feel sick. It was as if the air got thicker just looking at it. The support car in the back never moved. No door opened, no one got out. It was just there, stopped. And then I realized, there were no tire tracks on the ground. No one had turned that way. It was as if that path had been created on the spot. For me. I returned to the main road without turning. I kept driving, even though my stomach was churning. The radio remained silent for a while, as if it was waiting for my decision. After a few kilometers, the voice returned. This time, it wasn't just mine. It was others. Mixed together, overlapping, as if several versions of me were speaking at the same time. Some were crying, others were screaming, others were just repeating, "I shouldn't have turned, I turned, I saw, there's no way out." It was like hearing an echo of myself coming from places I'd never been. And even without understanding, I knew what it was. People like me, who found this frequency. The frequency doesn't show up on the radio again unless I search for it. It only appears when I turn the knob very slowly, as if I had to hit a precise point in the air. And now, every time I tune in, it shows a new transmission. Once I heard a conversation of mine that never happened. Me telling about the gas station where I slept with a strange guy next door, even though I hadn't stopped there. Another time, I heard my voice saying my mother's name, who is now dead, begging me to answer the phone. A phone that didn't ring. And the last thing I heard was something that destroyed me, my voice, calmly saying, "You've already turned. You just don't remember." Since then, I've started having memory lapses. I don't recognize stretches of road, even though I've been there hundreds of times. People who say they've spoken to me before, but I don't remember. A gas station attendant in Arizona called me by name before I could say anything. A man at a roadside diner asked how my shoulder was, and only later did I realize he was talking about a scar I didn't have, until yesterday. It appeared out of nowhere. Red, painful, as if it had been in place just a few days ago. I started to wonder if I'm still on the same road I came in on. If this is really my path, or if I took a wrong turn, without realizing it. I'm parked right now at an old gas station on the Nevada border. The radio is off, but I can still hear the music. Like it's inside me. Sometimes I swear I hear a tapping sound coming from the dashboard. 3 taps, like someone is trying to get my attention from behind the wheel. I'm afraid to turn it back on, but I know that at some point I'll turn the knob. It's stronger than me. Because right now, I think someone is trying to get out. And maybe it's a part of me that's stuck on the other side of the frequency. Screaming, trying to get back in. But what happens if it does? Yesterday I tried to break the radio. I took a wrench, dismantled half the dashboard and ripped out the wires. I thought that would be the end of it for good. But it was no use. That night, with everything turned off, the frequency came back, directly through the speakers, without any equipment connected. And this time, the voice was clearer than ever. It was mine, but older. As if it were coming from a twisted, sick future. It said, "You can still get out. But you have to hurry. He's coming." It didn't say who it was. But after that, I smelled a strong iron smell in the air, like fresh blood. And the truck started to vibrate, even though it was turned off. Now I only sleep with the mirror covered. Because I started to see something. Not my reflection, exactly. But another, me. Always in the passenger seat. Motionless. With skin that's too pale. His face hidden by the shadow of his cap. When I pass by a gas station and look in the rearview mirror from outside, he's there too, in the reflection. He never moves. He just keeps looking straight ahead. But I know he's alive. And he's waiting for something. Maybe the right moment to take his place. Or to remind me of what really happened. Every time I turn on the engine, the frequency 0.0 is already tuned in. It doesn't matter the brand of the radio, the truck, the road. It finds me. And I've already accepted that it wasn't a tuning error. It was a call. Something pulled me into this hidden band of the air, where voices get stuck, repeating the same warnings in eternal cycles. Some try to warn. Others just cry. And one of them just laughs. A muffled, dirty laugh, as if he were watching everything from a place we can't reach. If you're driving down a long, lonely road, and your radio goes from 1080 to 0.0, don't go on. Don't listen. Don't respond. Because it's not just a transmission. It's a door. And once you hear your own voice calling for help, you've already gone in. You just haven't realized yet that you haven't come out. I've always been careful about the time of my trips. I avoid driving when the sun is setting, especially in mountainous regions. The light is deceiving, creates strange shadows, reflects in the rearview mirrors, and tires the eyes. But that week, my schedule was tight and I ended up taking a stretch through the mountains of Colorado at the worst time, twilight. The road cut through the valleys like a blade, with sharp curves and tall grass on both sides. The sky was a burnt orange, even beautiful, and that was the setting in which it all began. Suddenly, a flash of light blinded me. It wasn't the sun. It was as if someone had shined a flashlight directly into my eyes from inside my skull. I blinked and shook my head, but everything went white. Then, dark. No transition. Totally blind. And the strangest thing, the truck didn't stop. It kept moving, steady, as if on autopilot. But I could feel the steering wheel in my hand, feel the wind, hear the tires on the asphalt. But I couldn't see anything. It was exactly 3 minutes. I timed it later. When my vision returned, I was on the same road, straight ahead, in the same direction. Everything looked the same, until I realized that the coffee cup that was in the holder was gone. I thought it had fallen. I looked for it, turned it over in the cabin. It was nowhere to be found. I thought it was just fatigue. That maybe I had passed out without realizing it. I kept driving and let it go. But the next day, it happened again. Same time, same route. 3 minutes of total blindness. Only this time, the radio had changed stations when I got back. And my jacket, which had been thrown on the passenger seat, appeared folded and placed behind the seat. It seemed like a joke. Or madness. But it was real. And with each new afternoon, the blindness returned. Always for exactly 3 minutes. And it always left a trail. Something out of place. Something moved. As if someone, or something, had entered there with me, while I couldn't see. The 4th time, I deliberately left my cell phone filming. I positioned it so that it covered the dashboard and the back of the cabin. When the blindness began, I felt that pressure behind my eyes again, as if the world was going black. When it passed and I could see the road again, I took a deep breath and went to watch the recording. The video stopped right when it got dark. Black screen. Audio cut off. It only started recording again the minute my vision returned. But for 2 seconds, before returning to normal, a scene appeared that still gives me goosebumps, someone sitting in the passenger seat. A figure. A human silhouette. Head down. And the jacket on the lap. I deleted the video right away. I don't even know why. Afraid of watching it again, maybe. Afraid of freezing the image and seeing more than I did the first time. After that, I started driving with all the mirrors covered. Even the rear-view mirror. I didn't want to risk looking to the side and seeing someone where there shouldn't be anyone. But even without looking, I could feel it. The cabin got colder during those 3 minutes. The air seemed stagnant, dense. And sometimes it smelled of iron. Faint, but present. Like old blood. I tried to change the route, change the time, even reverse the route. But it was no use. Wherever I was, if the sun started to go down, would go blind. For exactly 3 minutes. I started leaving objects in specific positions, as a test. A cap hanging from the steering wheel, a coin on the dashboard, an open bag of chips on the seat. Every time, when my vision returned, something changed. The cap appeared upside down. The coin disappeared. The bag of chips closed and folded. As if someone wanted to make it clear, I was here. It wasn't carelessness. It wasn't wind. It was intentional. One night, I left the GPS on the main screen with the map fixed. When I came back from my blindness, the map showed a stretch of road that I had never driven on, but which now appeared as a favorite route. A red line. And in the corner of the screen, written in small letters, "You've been here." Last week, I stopped at a diner in Glenwood Springs. I ordered coffee and sat in a corner. The waitress, a woman in her 60s, looked at me strangely. When she brought my order, she said in a low voice, "You smell." I asked her what it smelled like. She replied, "Of someone who sees without seeing. It only happens in the twilight curves." I thought it was the madness of someone superstitious. But before she left a folded piece of paper on the table. A scribble. A simple drawing, my cab, my truck. And in the passenger seat, a figure all black, with its face erased. Just like the silhouette in the video I deleted. Now, every time it gets dark and I start to lose my vision, I don't try to resist it anymore. I stay still, my hands firmly on the steering wheel, the engine running steadily, and my heart racing. And I wait. When my vision returns, I look around slowly, without rushing. Because I know something has changed. It always changes. And I don't know how long it will be until I'm not just a moving object, but myself. Until, one day, I come back from blindness and I'm no longer alone. Yesterday, I tried something different. I attached a night vision camera to the roof of the cab, pointing it at the passenger seat. I wanted to see if, even without light, I could capture anything during the blindness. I recorded the entire stretch of the trip between Rifle and Montrose, timed the sunset, and got ready. When the vision disappeared, I took a deep breath and let the truck drive on. 3 minutes later, I could see again. I went straight to review the video. And for the first time, it didn't freeze. The image captured everything. But it didn't reassure me. Quite the opposite. The second the blindness begins, the image darkens, but the silhouette appears. At first, just the figure. Then, as if materializing little by little, it begins to take shape. A thin, hunched body, with its head down and hands that are too big. The hands move, but they don't touch me. They fiddle with objects. They pick up the coffee cup, fold the candy wrapper, smooth the steering wheel. Then, one of the hands touches my shoulder, and I, even though I'm blind, feel myself react. I give a slight jolt. My body feels it. At the end of the 3 minutes, it disappears exactly as it arrived, in layers, slowly disappearing, like smoke. I don't know if I'm safe inside my own cabin anymore. I don't know if it's a reflection of myself, a shadow cast by something I don't understand, or something that's slowly replacing me. I've thought about telling someone, but how? Who's going to believe me? I've been to 3 garages just to check the electrical system, and no one has found anything. Everything was perfect. One of the mechanics just said, laughing, "Your truck is cleaner than a dentist's office." Little did he know what was sitting on that bench next to him. That night I covered all the mirrors with dark tape. I turned off the radio. But still, at the end of the 3 minutes of blindness, when I could see again, the tape was torn on one of them. And written on the glass, in my own finger, as if it were condensation from my breath, "I'm almost there." Now I know I don't have much time left. I can only hope that when the last twilight comes, it will be quick. On most trips, I don't even think about the tracker. It's just there for company protocol. It shows where I am, how long I've been stopped, my speed, that sort of thing. But that week, it became the center of everything. I was in Texas, delivering cargo between San Antonio and El Paso. A dry, long route, but without complications. The truck was normal, the weather was stable, nothing out of the ordinary. It wasn't until I stopped at a gas station in Ozona that the manager called me on the company radio, asking why I was deviating from the route. I was confused. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. But according to the tracker, I was in Alaska. I checked the system on the dashboard, pulled up the report on the company tablet, and there it was, 2 active points at the same time. One in Ozona, where I was actually, and another near Fairbanks, Alaska, with my truck, same license plate, same serial number. And even stranger, the 2 points moved in sync. As if I had been duplicated. The manager thought it was a system glitch, some tracking bug, a crossed signal. He told me to keep going and promised to check. But that stuck with me. Because when I looked deeper, I saw something even worse. The truck in Alaska was making the same stops as me, only with a slight delay, as if it were following me. I tried to turn off the tracker, restart the system. Nothing worked. Every time I reconnected, the 2 points returned. 2 different routes, 2 different states, the same vehicle. And what's more, the Alaskan track passed through inhospitable places. Roadless areas, through forests, through ice. Sections that no one in their right mind would drive. But it kept going. And it always behaved the same way. It stopped when I stopped. It moved forward when I moved forward. At night, I became obsessed, cross-checking the reports. That's when I noticed a detail that knocked me down. In each place that the other me passed, a local radio signal point disappeared. As if the truck was erasing something from the map. On the 3rd night, I woke up startled inside the cabin. I had dreamed of ice cracking. The sound of tires on packed snow. And when I looked at my tablet, the location of the other truck stopped. For the first time. In a roadless area in the middle of Alaska, where there was only dense forest. But, strangely, the stop coincided with a sound inside my own cabin, a click. Like a seatbelt being fastened. I looked to the side. Empty seat. But the belt was taut. Fastened. As if someone had just sat there. The next morning, I started to suspect that maybe it wasn't just a technical glitch. I called the trucking company and asked them to cross-reference the other signal with traffic cameras, just to see if anyone else saw it. The IT guy called me back, his voice shaking. "I saw you driving through Tok, Alaska. Same hat, same shirt, same license plate. With only one eye." He hung up right after and never answered. That stuck in my head all day. What the hell did only one eye mean? I couldn't get it out of my head. And when I stopped at a gas station in Van Horn, I overheard a trucker saying that he had passed someone, just like me, coming the other way. And that I hadn't even said hello to him. I began to avoid looking directly into the rearview mirror. Every time I glanced quickly, there seemed to be something off in the reflection. A detail out of place. A sticker I'd never put on. A smudge on the window. And the reflection looked dirtier. Like I was catching an aged version of the cab. I began to think that maybe the truck in Alaska wasn't just a physical duplicate. Maybe it was a temporal duplicate. Like what was following me was a projection of myself in another time. Or on another line of road. And little by little, it was trying to align itself with me. Until there was no difference anymore. This morning, I hurriedly pulled over to the side of the road. I couldn't breathe. The tablet began to vibrate on its own, and the tracker beeped constantly. When I looked, the 2 dots merged for a second. The exact same place. The exact same time. And then, the lights in the cab flashed, and the radio turned on by itself, playing a recording of my voice saying, "Finally." Then, silence. And when I tried to start the engine again, it didn't respond for nearly 2 minutes. When it came back on, the radio was stuck on a station in Alaska. Even though it was miles away. Since then, everything has seemed out of rhythm. My movements are a little delayed. As if I were living half a second apart. People look at me strangely. Cashiers take a long time to answer me, as if they can't hear me properly. And the reflection in the glass, now it smiles when I don't smile. I think the merger is almost complete. And when it happens, I don't know which of us will continue driving. Today, I managed to do something I hadn't tried before. I went the other way. I turned the truck back east and started retracing the entire route from San Antonio. Right then, the other dot on the tracker froze. It stopped for about 20 minutes. Then it started moving too. Only now, it was coming toward me. And for the first time, I felt what it must have felt, anticipation. It was like it knew what I was going to do before I even decided. The feeling was suffocating. With each stop, each turn, I felt the cabin get tighter. The air got thicker. And the sound of the engine, a little deeper. Like it wasn't the same truck anymore. I passed a lookout point and pulled over to take a breath. I turned on the tracker for the 1,000th time. And there it was only 13 kilometers away. Getting closer. Straight ahead. No curves, no detours. A straight, calculated movement, as if it knew exactly where I was. I got out of the cabin, walked to the side of the road. I looked at the horizon. And that's when I saw it. A tiny dot coming from the opposite direction. Fast. Smooth. No sound. No dust. A truck just like mine. Same model. Same shine on the windshield. And as it got closer, I felt a chill in my stomach as if something was leaving me inside. I went back to my truck and locked the doors. But I knew it wouldn't work. It wasn't physical, it was something else. I stood still, waiting. The other truck passed me less than a meter away. I closed my eyes, but I still saw it. Inside the cabin, at the steering wheel, me. But different. Thinner. My skin was grayer. And only one eye. The other was a dark, deep hole. And yet, he smiled. A calm smile. Almost, satisfied. When I opened my eyes, everything was still. The sound, the wind, the needles on the dashboard. Everything. As if time had held its breath for a few seconds. And then, everything came back. Since then, the other dot on the tracker has disappeared. Gone. But the truck, my truck, is no longer the same. The rearview mirrors show landscapes that don't exist. The cabin seems bigger at night. And sometimes I forget little details of my life. My name, my route, my hometown. As if I had stayed half there, in Alaska. And only this version, incomplete, flawed, had returned to the road. It was in Kansas that I first noticed it. The road was one of those that seemed to never end, straight for miles, with cornfields on both sides and an open sky without a single cloud. It was late afternoon, the kind of golden light that turns everything into silhouettes. I always liked driving at that time, the sun beating down from the side, the truck casting that long shadow behind it, as if the road stretched the soul of the vehicle. But that day, something was strange. I looked in the rearview mirror and, nothing. Not a shadow. The sun was there, steady, in the right direction, and yet, the back of the truck cast no shadow. I pulled over to the side of the road to check. I got out of the cab and walked around, trying to figure it out. The sun was beating down on the bodywork as always. My own feet cast shadows. Even the stones on the ground cast shadows. But the truck didn't. It was as if it were out of the way of the light. As if it passed right by it, as if it wasn't really there. I felt a strange shiver down my spine, that kind of feeling that couldn't be explained. It wasn't fear yet, but it was as if something had been turned off. A detail of the world that had always been there and now wasn't anymore. I started driving again, but the image of that absence wouldn't leave my mind. I started noticing everything. The reflection in the windows, the sound of the engine, the weight of the steering. Everything seemed the same, but different. As if something was imitating the truck, without really understanding how it worked. And then, after about 30 minutes on the road, I felt it. A light thud. as if someone had jumped on the back of the truck. I glanced in the rearview mirror again, quickly. Still nothing. Just the empty road and the field on either side. But the sound was of metal being stepped on. Slow, dragging footsteps, climbing up the back. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it could just be the noise from the road, something from the structure moving with the vibrations. But the footsteps continued. Slowly, rhythmically, as if they had a specific destination. Climbing, all the way to the top. Then, silence. A heavy silence that seemed to trap the air inside the cabin. That's when I realized, I could no longer see my reflection in the interior mirror. The evening light hit the glass, but it didn't give me any image. As if I had also lost my shadow. And for the first time, I thought, maybe whatever climbed up the bodywork is here inside now. I tried to stay calm and keep driving, but with every turn, the truck felt a little heavier, as if it were carrying extra cargo. The GPS indicated that I was on time, but the scenery was slow to change. The landmarks on the road seemed to repeat themselves: a silo, a lone tree, a yellow sign with the number 13. I saw all three of these things at least 4 times in less than 10 minutes. And every time I looked at the dashboard, the digital clock would blink. Not because of a power failure, it blinked as if it were trying to tell me something. It would show 18 hours 66 minutes for an hour. Then, dot. Then it would stop at 1900 hours. And there it stayed. It was at this point that I heard breathing. Low, weak, coming from the passenger seat. It wasn't the sound of the engine or the wind coming in through some crack. It was human breathing. Panting. Like someone who had just run upstairs. I looked at the seat, empty. But the seatbelt, which I always keep rolled up, was taut. As if it had been worn. I pulled the truck over to the shoulder on impulse, got out of the cab, and stood outside, with the sun already setting behind the horizon. And there, on the dirt, I saw something that stopped me. There was only one shadow. Mine. The truck kept moving, invisible in the light. After that, everything got weirder. I started the engine again, started driving, and now the local radios were picking up only static, except for one channel, a voice that kept repeating softly, "I see you." The voice was hoarse, but familiar. It sounded like mine, but lower, older. With each intonation, it sounded closer, as if it were whispering right next to my ear. I tried to turn the radio off, but it was no use. Even with the sound muted, the phrase continued, repeated, constant. As if it were glued to the truck. And then the steering wheel got stiffer. The steering wheel began to pull slightly to the right. As if the truck were being driven by something else. When I stopped again, near a village called Stockton, I realized what had really changed. I checked the outline of the vehicle with the light from my cell phone. And there, on the back of the truck, as if it had been scratched in the paint, was a human outline. Tall, thin, with very long arms, head tilted. Like a shadow drawn without light. And right below, in shaky letters, it said, "Never your reflection." Now, every time the sun starts to set, my truck loses its shadow. And in the mirror, I no longer always recognize myself. Today I tried to do the opposite of what I always did. I left the truck parked before sunset. I parked in an abandoned yard of an old grain silo, turned everything off, covered the mirrors with cloths, and sat outside, watching. I waited for the exact moment when the sun hit me from the side and the shadows stretched across the ground. And, as before, everything around me cast a shadow, except the truck. It just stood there, like a cutout in the scenery, like a body that wasn't part of the physical world. But this time, I saw something I had never seen before, something moving in the absence of shadow. A distorted shape, crawling close to the body of the truck. Like an outline trying to break free. I ran back to the cab and slammed the door. When I looked in the rearview mirror, he was already there. Sitting in the passenger seat, head down. He wasn't moving. He wasn't breathing. But he was there. As if he'd always been there. My eyes were burning, my head was aching, and for a moment I thought about throwing myself out of the truck and disappearing into the woods. But I stayed. I was afraid that if I got out, he'd take control. So I started the engine and got back on the road. Only now, I don't feel the weight of the truck like I used to. It's too light. As if it were hollow. I spent the day with this thing sitting next to me. No one saw it. No one commented. No one asked. But every time I stopped somewhere, a gas station, a snack bar, a toll booth, I saw a slight confusion in people's eyes. As if they noticed something was wrong but couldn't name it. And the worst part is that when I look at my reflection in the glass, it sometimes seems duplicated. As if my face blinked twice. As if one version of me was slightly behind the other. Getting closer and closer. As if it were waiting for its moment to take its place for good. If you're driving around and one day you notice that your truck has stopped casting a shadow, stop. Pull over. Pray. Do whatever. But don't keep driving as if it were normal. Because a shadow isn't just the absence of light. A shadow is proof of existence. When it disappears, it's because something else has taken over. And you won't realize it until it's too late, when it's just you and the shadow, fighting for the same body, on the road that no one else can see. Whenever I drive through Wyoming, there's a stretch of road that I usually avoid. I can't explain exactly why. It's a route like any other, cutting through plains and stretches of forest, but the air there is different. More still. Drier. But that day, because of a detour on the interstate, I ended up having to go that way. I was hungry, tired, and the GPS didn't indicate anything nearby. Until, out of nowhere, I saw a sign on the right side of the road, Stop 99, hot food, 24 hours. I had never noticed that sign before, even though I had driven that route dozens of times. The restaurant was too beautiful to be in the middle of nowhere. It had an old facade, with a red neon sign blinking slowly, as if it had been there for decades. It looked new, but at the same time it looked old. I parked and went inside, feeling a chill that I didn't understand at first. Inside, everything was sparkling. Impeccably clean, the smell of fresh coffee, and soft background music playing, a soft jazz, the kind you hear in old movies. I sat down at one of the counters and was greeted by a waitress in a retro uniform. She had a calm, polite, kind smile. She called me by name before I could even say anything. I was taken aback. I asked her how she knew. She smiled faintly and said, "You've been here before." But I never had. Never. I ordered coffee and a special of the day. I didn't know what to expect, but when the food arrived, it was exactly what I had been thinking about eating. Like, exactly. Right down to the cooked egg. I ate it all, without saying a word. It was perfect. The kind of food that feels like a memory, you know? With every bite, I felt a strange warmth in my chest. A mix of nostalgia and discomfort. Like I was eating something that wasn't meant for me anymore. That's when I asked her name. Just to make conversation. She looked at me for a few seconds before answering. We were colleagues in the 2003 accident. The fork fell from my hand. My head spun. I had survived an accident in 2003. A truck overturned on a curve, colliding with another vehicle. I was the only survivor. It was a convoy, 3 drivers. 2 died. She was one of them. I recognized her face only at that moment, younger, but unmistakable. And then, suddenly, the restaurant seemed to freeze. The voices disappeared. The jazz music stopped. And all the customers were staring at me. They all had that same vacant look. As if they weren't really there. I stood up slowly, my heart beating so hard it felt like it was going to burst out of my throat. The waitress watched me silently, as if she was waiting for some specific reaction. I left the counter without saying anything, trying to make my way to the door. The atmosphere seemed to have changed. The lights were dimmer, the air colder, and the music, which had once been comforting, now sounded drawn out and distorted. I looked at the other customers, faces that were starting to look familiar. People I had seen at wakes, in accident reports, in photos of truck drivers who had disappeared without a trace. When I reached the door and tried to push it open, it wouldn't budge. It was locked from the inside, with no visible lock. Behind me, the waitress said calmly, "You still don't get it. Stop 99 only appears to those who have already left, or those who are about to leave." I turned and yelled that this was crazy. But she didn't argue. She just pointed to the mirror next to the cash register. As I approached, nearly tripping, I felt a chill run down my spine. In the reflection, the restaurant was empty. No customers, no waitresses. Just me. Alone. Sitting at the table, with the still full plate in front of me. My face looked too pale. My eyes, too sunken. I ran back to the truck's cabin. I started the engine in a panic, almost destroying the clutch. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, the restaurant was no longer there. Just an open field. As if it had never existed. But the smell of coffee was still in the air. And the taste of that food, still in my mouth. And even stranger, the clock on the dashboard showed the same time as before. As if time had frozen while I was there. Or as if that place was outside of any time. An interval between what we are and what we have stopped being. I haven't felt the same since. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night with the smell of that place still on my clothes. I've seen the Stop 99 sign flashing in the fog, even when it shouldn't be there. And the other day, at a regular restaurant, a new waitress called me by name, before I could say anything. When I asked her how she knew, she smiled. A smile identical to the other one. Now, I don't know if I'm driving to get away or to get back. And if, at some point, I didn't realize that the 2003 accident didn't end the way I thought it would. I went back to where I had seen the Parada 99 sign. I wanted to know if I had imagined it all. It was just a shoulder of the road now, with tall grass and rotting wood on the ground, as if something old had collapsed there a long time ago. Nothing I remembered matched reality. But on the ground, among the dry grass, I found something that shouldn't have been there, a plastic menu with the Parada 99 logo printed in red. It was clean, dust-free, and showed no signs of age. And the strangest thing was the message written on the back, in my handwriting, "Last meal, 12:47 p.m., still hot." Ever since that day, I started receiving unnumbered calls on the radio in the cabin. Low voices, mumbling menus. Always the same items. Eggs, pancakes, black coffee, and names. Drivers' names. Some I recognize. People who disappeared on the road, who became statistics. Other names I've never heard. Maybe the next ones. Maybe me. I tried to ignore it, change the radio, pull out the wires. But the frequency comes back on its own. As if the road now had its own programming, broadcast only to those who have stepped where they shouldn't. Last week, at a stop in Idaho, I met an old truck driver, the kind everyone respects and no one knows where he came from. He looked at me and said, "You ate there, didn't you?" I didn't answer. He nodded and added, "You're already a shadow. You just didn't realize it." And he left. Now, I don't know what's a dream or a waking state. The food has no flavor, time doesn't pass the same way, and the world has a slight out of sync, like a broken record. Sometimes, when I stop at any restaurant, I hear someone say, "A table for one more." Maybe I'm already at stop 99. Maybe I've never left. Or maybe I'm just driving between one world and another, taking with me the taste of perfect food, served by someone who shouldn't be here anymore. I only know one thing: if you pass a flashing red sign in the middle of nowhere that says, "Stop 99, don't stop." Even if you're hungry. Even if you're tired. Because what feeds you there is never just your body. And what you leave never comes back whole.